Well, hello again. This is Randy Cross, and this is UnSafe Spaces USA. Hope you enjoy this week's episode. Should be a little bit of fun, a little bit of serious, a little mirth, and a little something in there every now and again to make you say, But today's interview is with Aandrew Hyatt. Aandrew Hyatt is the director of a new movie, just came out last week. Debuted last weekend, grossed over $5 million. It's called Paul the Apostle. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. In fact, how about a little tease, and we'll give you a little bit of information as to exactly what this movie is and who Aandrew is.
We always start with Scripture, first and foremost. Everything that we then bring in to try to create the world and to build the palette of characters, it all has to be referenced against Scripture. That's the number one thing.
I, Luke, send a message to all those that follow our Lord Jesus Christ. There is a terrible evil in the world. Darkness is spreading.
They've gathered men to overthrow Rome.
To what end?
Justice.
They want revenge.
No!
Why not?
Love is the only way. When the moment comes, you will have the strength to do what is right.
Your people die today. This world doesn't know a thing about love.
Where sin abounds, grace abounds more.
Yes, so we'll be joined in a little bit here by Aandrew Hyatt. But first of all, want to make a little bit of a commentary here on some things that I've seen. Now, somebody had a job there. They have a career. Their job is to do hamburger buns and hot dog buns. Well, what happens when you get bored? Well, what happens when you get bored? That's what happens when you get bored. But that's a career. A career is something that's based on you're going to get paid. You want to get some sort of enrichment off it. It's all about material things is what I'm saying. Now, a calling is completely different. If you can say you have a calling in life, you still have a job. You still have a career. The lucky people out there are the ones that combine the two, because you've got that little something, like it says right there, that burns in your soul and how you do it and why you do it. I have a quote here. It says, "A calling will be challenging. It will tax you to grow your talents and to make as much of them as possible." Now, for me, I'm lucky. I got to say, I did something very many people couldn't do or haven't done. I got to play football. It's become a calling in that now I do the radio and the television, things like this podcast. Probably one of the purest forms of having a calling and a career that I've ever seen is right there is Jane Goodall. And what she combined, her training with her passion, her career with her calling. And not enough people these days have that. I was lucky enough to be on a panel last Wednesday and with a pretty brave individual, I think, in the context of, he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer by the name of Harry Carson. You'll remember him. He's a former New York Giant, and he's right now very, very adamant that he doesn't believe kids should play any kind of contact sports that involves blows to the head. That's a very unpopular position within his career. But he really seems to be looking at this as more of a calling than anything else. He referred to it actually in his little speech as his own little family dictatorship. He's just declared, you're not going to play these sports. Now, do I agree with him? No, not even close. But I will tell you, I respect what he wants to accomplish. I respect how he's taken his career. He's taken something he's been recognized at the highest level, the Hall of Fame, and he's very much turning it into a calling. Check out Harry Carson, what he's doing. See if you agree with him. You may not. You may be like me. But one thing you can't deny is the passion behind what he's doing. And if you don't have that kind of passion in what you're doing, you might want to reconsider. You might want to check things out somewhere else. Because somewhere out there, there's that passion waiting for you. All right, coming up now, we're going to be talking with Aandrew Hyatt, who's the director of Paul the Apostle. And I think it's something you're going to enjoy. Check it out. As promised, joined right now by Aandrew Hyatt, the director of the new movie Paul the Apostle. Got off to a good start last weekend with a $5 million approximate gross. Aandrew, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
Yeah, this seems like, reading a little bit up on you in the movie, kind of a project of passion for you, directing it, writing it, everything else. Why this story?
Well, I tell everyone that I swore off making Bible movies or Christian films. I never wanted to be in that in that genre. Had no interest at all, and actually kind of felt like it was a step down from what I believed my career trajectory could be. But then I had an amazing, personal experience. I grew up in the church, but when I got to college, I was sort of like what a lot of people do, looking at the parties and the girls and the drugs and the drinking, and said, whoa, that's way more exciting than this church thing. and so, just had no interest in faith or anything for about 7 years. And then, just had a beautiful personal encounter with Christ and converted back to the faith. And it was sort of a call of, hey, these are amazing stories. You kind of knock these Bible stories and these individuals, but, why don't you go back into this and look at them closely? And when I did, I just found, just sort of these unbelievable human drama stories that are exciting to dive into.
Well, it's interesting to me from a current event standpoint, keeping up on news from all over the world. This movie is set in a period of time. Nero is the emperor of the Roman Empire at that point. And the Christian persecution it's not at its heights, but it's really, really going strong. And it seems nowadays there's not as much, but doesn't get the publicity it probably should. But especially in the Middle East, there's an incredible amount of Christian persecution going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was just something that really stuck out to all of us, including Sony Pictures and Affirm Films, way late in the process. Through the editing, when we were into the editing, all of a sudden we, exactly as you say, we started seeing headlines and thinking about what's going on in the world. And we thought, whoa, that's crazy. So first century Christians were dealing with the same thing that a lot of people around the world are dealing with. That's crazy. So it really is. It's surprising how relevant these themes are, and including just even the idea of what do you do in the face of a government that disagrees with you and wants to wipe you out.
Yeah, literally. Hey, what was the particular challenges of bringing sort of this time, this period to life, whether it was a character like Nero or just recreating ancient Rome? There's nothing about that that could have been particularly easy.
Yeah, it was really tough. It was a real challenge. How on, we had a really small budget. If your listeners know anything about sort of film budgets, we had a $5 million budget, which I know sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not. When you start thinking of, if I can put into comparison, something that just came out, like a Black Panther that probably cost about 180 to 200 million. So, we had 23 days to shoot the film. So just sort of the challenge of how on a small budget with no time really do you bring to life first century Rome in a way that feels really authentic. But we had an incredible team, incredible production designer, Dave Aerosmith out of Scotland, that was just very, very obsessive over the time period and over Rome, and just all the little details he was able to bring out on the budget we had is incredible.
Well, how about the cast you put together? I mean, you talk about the budget, what you can and can't do, and the bells and whistles and CGIs and all the stuff we see in so many movies. But you've got a cast that stands up against as good a cast as any other movie out there.
That's right. We an incredible cast. James Faulkner from Game of Thrones, Downton Abbey fame, and Jim Caviezel, of course, Passion of the Christ and Persons of Interest, and then Olivier Martinez, who has been around a long, long time. And we knew we needed such a strong cast because of not having that budget. You're totally right, to be able to kind of blow the world up, if you will, into this kind of spectacle. It needed to be a really dialogue-driven, human drama-driven film. And if we didn't have the cast that could support that, it could have gone really bad for us. So just we're very grateful that they responded to the script. They really responded to the idea of the performances they could put into this, and they did an incredible job, all three of them.
In talking to some people that have seen the film, I mean, it's only been out since the 23rd, right?
That's right.
Some interesting reactions, or surprised by some people, in that in the theaters while they're watching it. One guy said to me, he goes, I heard people sobbing and crying in the theater.
It's incredible. I mean, the audience response is very moving, even to me. I'm reading, I think the same things you are, or hearing the same things you are, which is, people saying, yeah, it was in the theater. Everybody around me sobbing. Nobody moved until they turned the theater lights back on after the credits. That's at least from my experience, a pretty rare thing these days.
Oh yeah, unless they're going to a Marvel movie, they always stay till the very end for the stinger.
That's right.
But no,
unfortunately, no secret scene of Paul returning back to life at the end of this one.
When you look at the subject specifically of Paul, is there anything that relates to events and people today?
There's sort of these just major, I keep calling them, kind of the themes of the human condition, of the human journey for all of us, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian. These same themes of forgiveness, grace, mercy, love, like all of us, don't we want to feel loved? Isn't that sort of the drama of our life? We want to feel loved by others or loved by something. And Paul kind of brings these questions out. And what I love about the film, we kind of took a very different approach. Again, I didn't want to make just a very Bible thumping biblical film where it just preaches. I really wanted to kind of ask some very difficult questions that if somebody came to the film kind of rolling their eyes saying, this Christian stuff, there really would be a dialogue, not just a preaching to them. So this character played by Olivier Martinez, the Roman character in the film, is a great character. And what I'm hearing is the feedback is that he's such an accessible character, because sometimes, with the biblical figures, St. Paul, St. Luke, these sort of big figures of the faith, they're a little inaccessible. But here's this ordinary man who comes into contact with these guys. He doesn't believe in anything they're saying, what they're doing. But he has his own issues. His marriage is falling apart. His daughter's dying. She's got a terrible sickness that nobody can seem to solve. And it's great because it allows us to kind of ask these modern day relevant questions that I think are on everybody's minds.
And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. You guys opened up in over 1,400 theaters nationwide?
Yeah, we were just over 1,400 nationwide, as well as Canada, and then a couple of countries across the world, South Africa and New Zealand and the Philippines. And then this week we open in Australia and a few others. So it's exciting.
Yeah. What are the particular challenges of doing a faith-based movie from that standpoint, from the distribution standpoint? Because like you said, you talk about a Black Panther or any other Marvel movie or, action movies. I mean, there's no bang, bang, shoot 'em ups, no CGI, no special effects. And
true.
realistically, it's not going to gross $500 million. But, there's definitely a market for this kind of film.
It is a little more difficult, but I will say, there is a huge market, and you do run into kind of this, unfortunately, they're so hit or miss that you do kind of have, you really need word of mouth. And we're thankful for that, because that's the big secret sauce, because, there are a lot of biblical films that come out all the time. And there are a lot of faith-based films that come out all the time. But in a way, because you don't have the big anticipation of a Marvel film, a character Black Panther or Thor or, Spider-Man or whatever, you kind of have this, every time you have to start the machine over and say, okay, this is a movie about this, and this is why you need to go see it, and this is why you should support it. So I think Affirm Films and Sony are doing a wonderful job by starting sort of on a smaller release, 1,400 screens as opposed to, 3,500 or 4,000, where you'd see a major studio Marvel film. And, they're just hoping that this buzz and this word of mouth continues, and we just kind of have a steady drift through, let's hope through May.
Ideally, that does happen, and it keeps going, and it builds momentum. What would you like people to be talking about when they discuss this film? Because there's always that one thing that people associate usually with a movie, whether it's Three Billboards in Ebbing or one of the other types of movies like that are the more artistic types that don't have all the flashes and bells and whistles. But what would you like people talking about when they talk about Paul the Apostle?
Yeah, I hope we have people leaving, and we do. We're seeing it on all the social media, and the buzz on these things is, cinematically first, it's excellent. I love to hear that. I love to hear that we took a biblical film and cinematically made it interesting. Where people say, well, it's just the cinematography, the score, the performances, it's phenomenal. That's a good thing, because a lot of faith-based films are not that. I think I can be blunt and say that. And then we hope that people are leaving. Really, the strongest thing we've heard is people are leaving saying, I really need to think about my life. Like, what a powerful thing to be able to communicate through art, through a medium like film, is having people leave the theater and really kind of saying, hey, there's some deep things in this that I really need to go home and think about. I don't know about you, but that's rare for me. I usually watch a film and an hour later I've forgotten which film I watched.
Yeah, it's usually to kind of escape and or unplug.
That's right. So it'll be interesting if it continues to push people to this. Hey, I saw this movie this week, and you got to go see it this week. It's really powerful, and it's really something that's going to, maybe not so far as change your life, but at least have you, wrestle with some things in your life.
Well, I can personally say you've got to go see this movie. It's a great movie, and you really will enjoy it, even if you're not of a particularly religious ilk. To be honest with you, I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Randy. I'm glad you got to see it as well.
All right. Well, Aandrew, thank you so much for joining us. Aandrew Hyatt, director, Paul the Apostle. Go see it. Check it out. And Aandrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Randy. God bless, man.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. That was fun. Thank you, Aandrew Hyatt. Good luck to Paul the Apostle. And like I said in the interview, check out this movie. It is pretty good. I got to be honest. I originally was going to go see it before I ever even met Aandrew Hyatt, mainly because I'm a fan of Jim Caviezel. And I like all the things that he's done. And you won't be disappointed if you're like me, because, again, he delivers in this one. All right, let's take a little time now for this week's Unsafe Sports. All right, the number one event this week in sports is the Final Four. It's going to be the buildup all week long to the final in San Antonio. The semifinal is actually, I think, to me, the best one-day action you can find anywhere. And I understand Super Bowls, that's just 2 teams. I understand Daytona. I understand, go down the list, Kentucky Derby, blah, blah, blah. The semifinal games, those 2 games, you've got the fans of 4 teams and all the other crazy basketball fans that can afford to be there. Well, are going to be in San Antonio. That scene in those 2 games is as good as it gets, I think, in the world of sports. And there's your bracket, the final bracket. Now, I know a lot of people out there had Villanova, and they had Kansas, and Loyola Chicago? Who had Loyola Chicago? I believe the stat was ESPN had over 17 million brackets filled out. And 555 had these 4 teams. How great is that, though? Kansas is a legendary program. Michigan has had its moments in basketball. Villanova is the defending champion. Jay Wright right now might be the best college basketball coach there is in the country. And when people think of Loyola Chicago, they think of Sister Jean right now. They're, I guess, mascot-like none. Their spiritual leader at Loyola Chicago. I can't wait for this weekend. Saturday will be an amazing evening. 2 great basketball games. They'll both take right at about 2 hours to play. In 4.5 hours or so, you'll get unbelievable action from 4 teams. That's right. 2 games, 4.5 hours, and it can be done. So baseball, football, pay attention, will you? Next up, in the world of golf, after this week, starting Monday, is Masters Week. And because of the way Tiger Woods has played, he's the prohibitive favorite going in to Augusta National. And he's the prohibitive reason, number one reason, tickets to the Masters are going to be stupid expensive. Now, usually the biggest day for fans to go and look is Wednesdays. That's the last practice round. That's when they play the par 3 course. And then on the weekend, Saturday is a pretty hot ticket. And right now, they're right there in this $3,500 range. Now, that's not for both days. That's for one day. That's for one person. Yeah, $3,500. Good luck with that. But here's some of the excitement Tiger Woods has sort of popped back into the game of golf.
Far surpassed our expectations of how well he was going to play.
I bet it goes in. Why the hell do you think we're showing it?
From 71 feet. Count it. Add another moment to Bay Hill War.
Did I just see that?
I think the great expectations are now real.
Yep, there he is, and that's a long time ago. That was a rebuilt back ago for Tiger, but he's now 6-1 favorite, and in golf, 6-1 is a prohibitive favorite. Coming up in May, in another month and a half or so, is the NFL draft. And I only mentioned the NFL draft because over the last week or so, the draft order got sort of jumbled up. In fact, the best thing to do with the old draft order is that you put it up there and you draw X's through it because it doesn't apply anymore. And that's because of the trade with the Jets and the Indianapolis Colts. So the Jets are now going number 3 and the Colts are going number 6. That means the Jets, who really need a quarterback, will more than likely get a chance to get the guy they, at least at that time, they'll say they want. The actual quarterback drafted number 1 may be the guy they really want, and they may not be done moving around in the draft. But they gave up a pretty good amount of picks, mainly second-round picks, in this draft and next year's draft to make that move. I'm not anticipating anything too crazy by the Jets, that is. I don't think they're done moving around. I don't think they're done trading. And my honest opinion is, and we'll talk about this in the coming weeks as we get closer to the draft, I think Lamar Jackson of Louisville is the best quarterback in this draft. I think after that, it's Sam Darnold, then Josh Allen, then Josh Rosen, number 4. And I'm not really positive if any of those guys is worth having to take with a top 3 to 5 draft pick. But that's why I'm glad I don't do that, and my job's not on the line for doing that. I'd pick one of these defensive backs or offensive guards or pass rushers or, hell, anybody but a quarterback in this draft class up that high. But you know what? That's just me. Another great highlight of this week, opening day in baseball. Look at the bunting. You know, the great John Madden kind of brought bunting back to football. But you associate that bunting. And if you don't know, under opening day there, the little frilly things at the bottom, that's bunting. Well, opening day is, you know, if spring baseball is a tradition, opening day is a spectacle. Opening day, you get 2 things. You get rebirth of teams, and you usually get some snow. And the way the weather's been lately, we're almost guaranteed to get some snow. Opening day will be on this Thursday, tomorrow. So it'll be kind of fun to see how that all kicks off. But remember, once that excitement dies out, baseball is the longest, most mind-numbing regular season in sports. I mean, it's longer than anything. It's 162 dang games. So if you can't find something you want to root for in baseball, you aren't paying attention, because you got more than 6 months to get it in. But opening day is Thursday. The bunting will be out, and you have been warned. All right, let's go to next up on the parade. Used to be Butthurt. Now it's Wahmbulance. I love that. The Wahmbulance this week is kind of my Wahmbulance. Something happened after this whole thing with Parkland High School and the 17 deaths and the protests and the marches and everything else. It happened last week in Maryland. A school resource officer by the name of Blaine Gaskell, ended up killing a 17-year-old high school student who had brought a gun to school to, I guess, shoot his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, and dealt with it very quickly. That news story hit the wires. That news story hit TV. That news story hit the internet. So did Blaine Gaskell, and suddenly they were all gone. No one cared to spend much time talking about this. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe, just maybe, it didn't fit all the agendas on the people that pay for those buses and those huge sets and sound systems that go in those for those marches. It just stinks. I want to just be on record as saying thank you to Blaine Gaskell. Thank you for all the resource officers like him that are available to protect our kids. Let's check out this story.
But this time it appears a school resource officer took action and stopped a potentially bigger problem. Jeff Pegues reports from Great Mills, 65 miles southeast of Washington, D.C.
I didn't really believe that something like this would happen to a school near me. And it's really scary.
Have one CPR in progress. One with a gunshot wound to the head, one with a gunshot wound to the leg.
Police say 17-year-old Austin Wyatt Rollins opened fire in a hallway and shot 16-year-old Jalen Willie.
There is an indication that a prior relationship existed between the shooter and the female victim.
Blaine Gaskell, the school resource officer, a former SWAT team member, responded within a minute, firing one round.
No question that his actions, his quick and immediate actions, potentially saved a great number of lives.
A tragedy, no doubt. Something that could have been prevented, not sure. But the fact that there was a good guy with a gun when a bad guy with a gun showed up saved lives and saved a lot of families much, much grief. Thank you again to Blaine Gaskell, the school resource officer. Hey, next up, let's go to the feel-good story of the week, and I think you're going to like this one. Yeah, this is a story that just really came across, was it yesterday or maybe in the last 36 hours? Shannon Bream, who's an anchor for Fox News, was on an airplane flying across the country, and she was sitting next to a gentleman who was somehow connected here to a dying boy who had a sort of a last request that wanted to get a chance to meet and or get some greetings from some of the Avengers. And you know, the Avengers is a big deal, especially in a kid's world. Well, she tweeted this out. Need to help Twitterverse, trying to help a young boy who is dying. He probably just, in just days, needs a greeting from one of the Avengers. If you have any celebrity connections, let me know. Otherwise, could you help with a retweet? Thank you in advance. And that was it. Well, thankfully, in this case, in this story, that was not it. And that was not all there was. You look at some of the guys here that represent the Avengers. Now, and I realize the gentleman in the middle, Ryan Reynolds, great sense of humor, plays Deadpool, has played many other characters, not officially an Avenger, but for this story, he kind of sort of is. Because as you go along in the process here, it's a good one. It's a really good story. Check out the video. Yeah, and it's worth mentioning there, like again, Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool are not officially Avengers, but they are now for everything they've all done to help out this young boy. And another great thank you, not only to Shannon Bream, but also to Jake Tapper from CNN for the assist in all this and making that happen. Because, when it's all said and done, that more than anything else, affecting a life, being able to do something like that, put a smile on a young boy's face, that's worth more than those millions you get. The people that all were involved in this are really to be commended, because this is the kind of feel-good story that makes this podcast, I think, what it is. All right? Hey, I want to thank you for joining us this week. I want to remind you where you can find us in the world, in the Twitterverse, on Facebook. all over. You can find Unsafe Spaces USA. You can get it on iTunes. You can get it on Stitcher. You can get it on SoundCloud. Go to randycross.com. Go to unsafespaces.com if you have any questions, comments, or anything you want to pass along to us. And send that to producer@unsafespaces.com. All right, time for us to say goodbye. Time for us to say happy trails, and let's knock down a few stadiums.
Happy trails.